I think as more and more people collaborate using software and they are like in different parts of the world, one, like obviously notifications play a big role in keeping them updated or knowing what to work on, or coming back to their main like software of use and seeing like what needs their attention. But also I think like software makers have more of a responsibility to do better notifications so that people aren't overwhelmed. People like right now, at least the way I feel as a user is I get all these notifications, but I almost have to manage them in my own mind. I have to remember which ones are important, which ones are not. I think going forward, every application should do a much better job. And it's hard for people to do this on their own. So services like Magicbell are going to, I think, help more and more. Yeah. So it's not just business use case, but even B2C or education. I think notifications are useful for everybody. I actually don't know if you saw it on our website, but we definitely believe that notifications are a force for good. They can actually help us manage our work, manage our relationships. And I know a lot of like notifications get seen very negatively, and it's true, but it's I think true more because the right tools haven't existed for software developers to use. So I think I have a mostly positive answer for that, because I think sometimes people expect there will be a negative answer, and I think for a lot of like trans people it is. But I think I definitely have a little bit of an advantage that I sort of transitioned late in life, so I'd already established myself a little bit as an entrepreneur. I'd also certainly gained financial independence, so I didn't really need to depend on anybody else. Like, for example, if I had not raised money, Magicbell would like not be on this trajectory, but we would still be running it with the money I had or something. So I definitely come from a place of more like more advantage or leverage, as they call it. So I don't need to interact with people who are transphobic, for example, or who don't value female entrepreneurs. On the more positive side, however, though, by being a female entrepreneur, I actually can now reach out to more investors who are women, more angel investors who are women and want to support women. And like if you look at our investors, I think 40% of them or so are women, and these are women who are very sort of, they have a mission of sort almost to invest in more female entrepreneurs. So in some ways I've actually benefited from it. Again, I don't really have a strict comparison because I never raised money before, and I didn't transition during this startup. Like had I transitioned exactly during this startup, then I would have known like how the perception changed. I came into this startup after finishing my transition. So I've had like one or two experiences where people like misgendered me, didn't want to acknowledge it. But honestly, on the whole, it's been pretty positive. If anything, I think since there are such few transgender entrepreneurs, especially who have been funded, right, that's why you reached out to me. That's why sometimes I get press mentions. I do have to say I think the flip side of that is I don't want to be necessarily, I do actually want to talk about being trans and how it impacts my emotions, but I also don't want every like appearance I have to be about that as well. Yes. So I think I have to carefully navigate being seen as a trans entrepreneur, but also just being seen as an entrepreneur, and making sure the discussion about the company is mostly focused on the product and the team, and not so much about being a woman entrepreneur. I don't know if that answers your question. So overall, my experience has been pretty positive, but it's because probably I came from a little bit of a place of already having established myself. Okay. If I was starting out today, I don't know how it would change. Well, not while I was transitioning. I think like while I was transitioning, I felt very lost. I actually didn't feel, because there was just so much change happening in my life that I certainly I was conscious of my voice, how I looked. I mean, I'm still conscious of how I look. Every woman is in some ways, but I was very new to that whole idea, right? Like you started when you're presenting male, you never really care about it. You can show up whatever in shorts. Like with women, it's not like that. There's almost this innate sense and a social pressure to like look a certain way, talk a certain way, present a certain way. So I felt extremely lost, and I definitely had to take a backseat from my business then, and it definitely suffered because of that. I think it would have grown much more had I not done it. So there was definitely a very tangible cost to pay. What I meant is, now that I have transitioned and I feel more confident in my own self. And even that was a little bit of a journey. It wasn't like my transition finished and boom, I was confident. Like, it's like layering things, right? Like, first is like just how, you feel internally. Then it's like how you dress and feel comfortable. Then it's like how you speak with people. So I definitely had to layer it on. So I would say like most of my 2020 was kind of like layering on that confidence. And I'm still working on it. Like, you're never really done doing it. But I definitely feel I've arrived at a place where I fear for other reasons, like any entrepreneur does, but not because I'm a trans entrepreneur. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like,
can you give us
I never that's just like being a woman. I never worried before about like being safe, for example. I never worried that, people can overpower me and use that privilege so freely. Like, so that whole concept of just how, like, walking in the night or even sometimes in the morning or whatever, getting into an unpleasant experience with somebody can like turn into a physical act of violence. Like, I never had that. I never felt that. Like, I knew it existed intellectually, but I'd certainly never felt that. I think like, I'm still very early in the journey, right? Like, I've only raised like, which sounds like a lot when you're looking from outside, like $4 million or something like that. But I haven't gone out to raise a $200 million round or a $500 million round. So I don't know like how access to like, which is mostly like boys club, at least like the higher up you go in that chain, I don't know how that access will change. So I don't have enough like experience yet. But I certainly feel that it's hard to be objective about it. But I definitely feel like I had a lot more like access to like moving in different circles before my transition, no doubt about it. That's very specific. First of all, I know there are networks like that. I know there are investors in the world who say that they are, and they probably do. I certainly didn't feel that I got any extra support because of being LGBTQ, or it certainly didn't help in any way. Like, I felt like at best it didn't hurt. Maybe for some people they admired my journey and respected me for like some of the courage or whatever, they think I exhibited. But I certainly didn't feel that I had access to any resources which said, oh, since you're an LGBTQ entrepreneur, we have this money set aside for you. We have these resources set aside for you. We have these customer intro. Like, I have not felt that so far, to be honest, anywhere, not just in Spain, but anywhere actually. And in some ways I'm kind of glad, right? Because if I got into Y Combinator because they were accepting LGBTQ entrepreneurs, like, I would forever be feeling like maybe I don't really belong there. Or if I had raised money from an LGBTQ fund, maybe I would have felt like, so I think in some ways for me, it's always been this challenge where, and this was probably the reason why I also didn't transition for so long or accept that I'm trans, is because I didn't want to feel that something is holding me back and use that as an excuse. So now it's like about like, it does hold me back in some ways, but then at the same time, I don't want it to be like a limiting factor in my life. But certainly, like, I have not received any kind of, or I haven't been approached, in fact, either. I haven't been by anybody who said, maybe like support you as a women entrepreneur, perhaps, yeah. But as a LGBTQ specifically, no. I think like as a young startup, at least, your number one concern is always like, will you survive? Will you get the next round of funding? Because it's almost like we're like a newborn child. We have like, it's very easy to kill us. Like, like when you're a grown-up adult, you can survive a lot more easily, at least, right? So, in my opinion, we have the intention to do it and we are doing what we can, but we are certainly not going out of our way to be LGBTQ friendly. We are doing just the sort of most basic, sensible things that any business should do, like listing pronouns, asking for pronouns in job applications, respecting people's pronouns. If some LGBTQ people come and tell me in the interview that I try to respect their privacy, things like that. But I think like actually supporting them would be to like make sure our health insurance is LGBTQ friendly, make sure our leave policy allows for transition related leaves. We are certainly not there yet. We have the intention to do it, but unfortunately we are too small, which is an excuse, I agree. Like, we can certainly do it now if we really wanted to, but I certainly pick my battles like very carefully, and it's not a battle we want to pick.
Yeah.
Like there are new businesses coming up, and but honestly, like I don't really think of our competition as other startups or other notification startups. I consider our competition as this tendency that this sort of like behavior that exists, that if you build a product, you send emails for notifications. So I think like the competitor we really have is more of this attitude or more of this practice than the other notification startups. I'm actually happy to see more competition if it comes up, because we will all benefit from it. It will grow the space. It's in fact best to not be the only one fighting the fight, because then you are the one spending all the resources educating people. That's a very good question. I would say that's what I thought initially. Like I thought that I was ambitious because I was trying to like find something to hold on to, and it was kind of true maybe in the way that I was probably being extremely obsessive about it, or the way I was probably not able to enjoy some of the other aspects of life. And then during the transition, I certainly had to drop my ambition to give myself the space to transition. I had to stop working on what I enjoyed, because it was overwhelming to like go through all these changes, figure out the paperwork, all of that. But then once I was kind of done with it, I had a period where I was just like, just taking it easy. But then it kind of started coming back to me, and I realized, no, I am actually genuinely pretty ambitious. I do want to like create wealth and for myself, for other people. So I don't think I left that behind, but I think I don't now approach it from a place of sort of like a place. Yeah, no, not even that, but more like from a place of confusion, or from a place of like uncertainty, and thinking that I don't know what else to hold on to, so this is probably the one I'll hold on to the most. I think now I'm able to like I feel like somehow like when you are transgender and you haven't transitioned, life feels a bit like theater. You feel like you are playing a role, and we are all playing a role in some ways. But to me, it felt like I wasn't really playing my role. I was playing like this role of somebody else, and I got really good at playing it over time. Like whether it's men or women, they all like learn from each other, and they kind of mimic each other's behavior. So like I mimicked like behaviors of men, and so a lot of them didn't really seem to fit me very well, but I got good at playing them, being performative. But now it just feels like I'm like equally ambitious. I'm sometimes equally anxious, equally excited or frustrated. But it feels that I'm playing myself more now than I ever have before. Like it doesn't feel like I'm performing someone else, and I have to like literally drive that personality. It seems very intrinsic now.